The footage, which was leaked just hours ago, is already going viral on social media, with fans demanding answers and producers frantically trying to control the narrative. However, the damage may already be done because it all happened during what was supposed to be a routine filming day, just another scene between the longtime couple. But something happened, and voices were heard. No one saw it coming, not even the cast or crew, and certainly not Rasheeda. It's now considered one of the most shocking moments in love and hip-hop history. Then, in a moment that sent the internet into a frenzy, Kirk lunged toward Rasheeda in a way that no one had anticipated from the man she had been with for years. Fans are now wondering, what really happened behind the scenes? Was it a one-time outburst or a glimpse into something much darker? Rasheeda hasn't spoken publicly, but sources say she's devastated and done, and VH1 insiders suggest that this scandal could endanger not just Kirk's future, but the entire franchise. Rasheeda was sitting in the corner, scrolling through her phone, trying to keep her composure, but anyone who knew her could see the emotion bubbling just beneath the surface. The Love and Hip Hop set buzzed with the usual controlled chaos, cameras in position, assistants running around, and makeup artists doing last-minute touch-ups, and Kirk Frost walked onto the set with a tight expression, clearly tense, his jaw clenched as if holding back a storm. The reveal will leave you speechless under the bright glare of the production lights. The audience was unaware that just before the cameras began to roll, Kirk had discovered private messages on Rasheeda's phone. They were her venting to a friend about Kirk's most recent betrayal. She wrote, "I don't know how much longer I can pretend this marriage is okay." When Kirk saw to his designated spot on the set, waiting for the play to start, but he was seething inside. The scene they were supposed to film was supposed to be a straightforward conversation about their son's school situation, but when the director called action, Kirk couldn't fake it and instead went on a tirade. "That's how it feels to pretend for the cameras while dragging me behind my back." Rasheeda looked up in shock, realizing that wasn't even close to what she was talking about. Her voice was already cracking your little messages, and I saw everything. Kirk snapped, stepping closer to her, and the crew hesitated, unsure. The air felt heavy, and the tension was strong, whether it was from intensive acting or real life happening in front of them. Rasheeda's eyes widened as she said, "He went through my phone." "Don't pretend you're not guilty," Kirk yelled, "because you've been disparaging me while grinning in my face, Rasheeda, and I'm sick of phony." I have to vent to someone, Kirk. I can't hold all of this in anymore. You're never there. You lie, you cheat, and I'm drowning, Rasheeda said, her voice trembling as the director attempted to cut the scene, signaling a pause, but Kirk didn't stop because his emotions had taken over. Kirk was pushed over the edge by those remarks, and nobody saw what happened when he raised his hand in a single motion. Then, in what seemed like slow motion to everyone watching, his palm touched Rasheeda's cheek. Gasps filled the air as someone dropped a clipboard, and Rasheeda stood stunned, her face turned away. A moment of silence was followed by a flurry of activity as crew members ran forward. The assistant director screamed for security, and one of the sound guys hurried to gently guide her away. Kirk just stood there, breathing heavily, and his eyes were wide as if he couldn't believe what he had just done, but it was done, and there was no going back. The cameras continued to roll, not intentionally, but out of shock. Catching. A moment that would go down in history. Kirk Frost, a longtime cast member, was caught on camera hitting his wife outside the set. Word quickly spread like wildfire after a crew member texted someone about something unpleasant that had just happened. Kirk then hit Rasheeda on camera, and social media was ablaze in a matter of minutes. By the time Rasheeda was brought to her dressing room, her name was already well known. Fans were shocked and didn't want to believe what they were hearing, but the words kept coming in. Everyone had a different version of events, and none of them made Kirk look good. Meanwhile, back in her dressing room, Rasheeda sat quietly, her makeup smearing her cheek, which was already red. She didn't cry, but tears had dried up, and she felt a strange sense of relief, as though something that had been kept under wraps for too long had finally surfaced. She whispered to her stylist, "He really did it. He really hit me." Outside the door, producers were in a panic, debating what to do. Some wanted to halt the entire shoot, while others said they needed to make a statement before the footage leaked. But one thing was for sure. this was not going to remain private. On their phone, and even though the network's cameras captured it in high definition, the hazy phone footage would be the first thing to go viral online. As for Kirk, he left the set without saying sorry or providing an explanation, just walking out with his shoulders. Rasheeda watched the clip in silence, and it made her cry. Not because of what her mother said, but because she knew it was true that she had disregarded the warnings, the gut instincts, and the sleepless nights. All for what? A marriage that had become a prison, a partner who had become a stranger. But still she hesitated deep down, a part of her that didn't want to give up, perhaps out of love, fear, or perhaps. The following day, the network issued a statement saying, "Vuan is aware of the incident involving Kirk and Rasheeda Frost, and we do not condone violence in any form. Steps are being taken to ensure the safety and well-being of our cast." It was vaguely safe corporate, but fans weren't satisfied and demanded action, demanding that Kirk be removed permanently. Sponsors started removing ads from the show, and executives were in crisis mode despite this. There are two sides to every story, and when Storm Kirk finally spoke up, he did so with a weak video posted on his story. People only saw what the cameras captured, and he started off sounding defensive and exhausted. "I regret what happened. I love my wife, and I never meant to hurt her. But the damage was done." Comments poured in, most of them angry, and one fan wrote, "You just tried to save face." Another remarked, "Don't gaslight us. We saw the slap and the fear." Rasheeda didn't answer in public, but in secret, she was getting ready. Her team had been in touch with a lawyer to talk about her choices, including getting a divorce, but not to sue Kirk. She was leaving the show completely because she was sick of acting, pretending, and carrying a lie. That had turned into a nightmare, but as the days went by, a new twist surfaced. Before the slap, raw, unedited film was leaked. It showed Kirk pacing angrily backstage while screaming to himself, "I'm done playing the good guy, and she's going to learn today," among other things. The revelation verified supporters' fears that the slap was planned and deliberate, with him plummeting well before the cameras captured it. Since this revelation, everything has changed. Even those who had attempted to defend Kirk have retreated, and other cast members have begun to distance themselves. Producers have started re-editing episodes to minimize his presence, and there are rumors that he may be entirely cut out of future storylines. Despite all of this, Rasheeda has remained largely silent, but her strength has shown in other ways. She went live from her store, laughing with staff members, and posted pictures of herself with her kids smiling. She didn't mention Kirk once, but her message was clear that she wasn't broken. This time, however, there were still questions about whether she would return to the show, confront Kirk in public, or leave for good. Alone, rejected, and uncertain about whether his empire would survive the fallout. And this was only the beginning, as the dust had barely begun to settle, and Rasheeda's silence grew louder with each post she made. Kirk's situation was unraveling faster than he could handle, so the network paused all filming involving him. Brands that had once sponsored him started pulling back, and some of his longtime business partners issued quiet statements of reevaluating. Behind those fleeting moments of strength, though, was a woman still processing the betrayal of a lifetime. Fans admired her resilience, but they didn't see the nights she cried alone. The times she questioned every decision, or the times she almost picked up the phone to call him but stopped herself. Their connection to Kirk was being eroded piece by piece, and no one was publicly defending him. However, what hurt Kirk the most was not the losses to his business or the criticism from the media, but rather Rasheeda's silence. He had expected her to snap, perhaps even go live, and shout his name into thin air, but instead she simply moved on, and that made him feel worse because he realized she was done and no longer angry. But Kirk couldn't let go that easily in a desperate attempt to maintain control. According to the story, he begged one of the show's producers for a sit-down piece saying, "I need to tell my side." The producer hesitated. There were risks, but drama was money, and Kurt, desperate, raw, and rejected, was drama gold. A few days later, cameras rolled again, but this time in a closed studio. Kurt sat under the lights, sweat glistening on his forehead. His voice cracked as he began. "I grew up," he said. "I never saw a healthy relationship around chaos, which may be why I make mistakes so frequently and messed up with Rasheeda." He wiped his face, but I never imagined it would get this bad. The video was supposed to be used to contain the damage, but instead it stoked a new. However, for Kirk, the damage was done. And even though the whispers grew louder, no one believed that he could be saved. He was the antagonist in the story. As Rasheeda's life took a completely different turn after the confrontation on the show, she began receiving offers from brands that had previously distanced themselves from her. Her social media presence skyrocketed, and she started sharing more about Journey, her rise in the industry, her struggles, and how she had finally learned to put herself first. People rallied behind her, and her fan base grew daily, bringing with it a sense of liberation she hadn't felt in a long time. Not only did fans take notice, but other celebrities also started to show their support. Celebrities privately reached out to Rasheeda to offer their condolences, friendship, and support. Some even said that it was inspiring to see her not only survive but thrive after everything she had been through. Once the floodgates opened, people started to view her not just as a reality TV star, but also as a woman who had gone through enough hardship to write her own story of resilience. However, behind the scenes, Rasheeda was being pulled in different directions by her own struggles, deals, media appearances, and family. Even though she was regaining her power, there were still moments of weakness when she questioned whether she was strong enough to carry the weight of her own new narrative in the weeks following the televised confrontation. She was tired, and there were days when she just wanted to shut out the noise, but she couldn't because of everything that had happened to her. She was no longer the woman who had cried in silence, hoping her husband would change. Instead, she was someone else. Someone stronger. In a private meeting with her team, she stated that she wasn't just considering Kirk's potential return to the show. There were rumors that the producers were considering him for a spin-off series that would only focus on his redemption arc. Kirk's team had reportedly been in discussions with the network to push for the idea that his story was far from over, but Rasheeda wasn't having it. She told her management and the network that if Kirk were to return in any significant way, she was done. "I'll walk away before I let him drag me back into that toxic mess," she said. She was making decisions for herself for the first time in a long time, but Kirk didn't give up that easily. To soften his image, he went public with a social media post that addressed Rasheeda directly. He wrote, "I know I've messed up. I know I've hurt you, but if there's even a small chance to rebuild what we had, I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Rasheeda didn't reply, and she didn't even acknowledge the post. Kirk's words were just another attempt to control the conversation, and she had discovered the hard way that words were cheap actions. Mattered, but then, just as things appeared to be settling down, a new bombshell was dropped. A close friend of Kirk's who had supported him throughout the entire scandal revealed that Kirk had been seeing someone else while he was married to Rasheeda. The news rocked the already divided community, and many of the fans were devastated. Kirk tried to salvage what remained of his public image, but it was too late. Every lie and betrayal had finally caught up with him, and he was no longer able to escape his past. Fans who had once supported Kirk turned against him, calling him a liar, a manipulator, and a coward. His social media pages were inundated with comments, and even his most devoted supporters started to wonder if he deserved a second chance after the scandal. Kirk's attempts to repair his public image had failed spectacularly, and now his personal life was exposed for everyone to see. The revelation about his affair sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry, and people began to question whether he was truly capable of changing things. He made several attempts to mend his marriage, including sending flowers, writing lengthy letters of apology, and even unexpectedly visiting Rasheeda's home. But each time she refused to meet with him, his apologies sounded hollow because she had finally accepted that Kirk couldn't provide the kind of commitment she deserved, and had created a new life for herself free from his toxic presence. Rasheeda's decision to cut Kirk out of her life was further cemented when she received support from an unexpected source when her mother, who had always doubted Kirk, sat down with her daughter and told her the harsh truth. "You've been through enough, baby. No man is worth this pain. He's shown you who you really are." Her words served as a wake-up call for Rasheeda, who didn't need Kirk's promises or apologies. Instead, she needed peace, strength, and independence. As Kirk's attempts at reconciliation became more desperate, the public's perception of him deteriorated, and the reality TV world, which had previously embraced his dramatic plot, rejected him. Kirk's team persisted in pursuing his comeback plan, despite hip-hop's confirmation that he would no longer be featured on the show in any meaningful way. His downfall was complete, and he was left to pick up the pieces of his broken career. A new series was reportedly in the works, a documentary-style show that would follow his journey of redemption. The idea sounded too good to be true, and many saw it for what it was: another calculated attempt to turn his failures into a profit. Kirk's team insisted that it was about more than just making money, the man he claimed to be. But the truth was that his decline from grace had been too severe, and the public had lost interest in his soba story. Meanwhile, Kirk's career was in ruins, and Rasheeda was thriving. Her business endeavors were booming, and she was being approached for high-profile collaborations. She had become a symbol of tenacity, a woman who had escaped a toxic relationship and come out stronger than before. And her story spoke to millions of fans, many of whom had experienced. Rasheeda became a voice for women who had been in abusive relationships, showing them that they could rebuild their lives and regain their power by sharing her journey of self-love, independence, and empowerment. Meanwhile, Kirk, the franchise's face, found himself a forgotten relic of a bygone era, his social media following dwindling as the public's interest in him waned, and his attempts to stay relevant seemed increasingly pitiful as he clung to the past with every post and public statement. His once exciting career was now a cautionary tale. In a last-ditch effort to preserve what little of his reputation remained, Kirk shared a video on social media that was heartbreaking and full of regret. He acknowledged his mistakes, acknowledged the pain he had caused Rasheeda, and promised to do better. But once again, his words fell flat. His fans had seen this side of him too many times and were no longer buying it. The video was met with a mixture of sympathy and skepticism, with some fans expressing their disbelief. The fact that Kirk had lost not only his marriage, but also his career, reputation, and place in the reality television industry, while others had simply moved on and were no longer interested in his story, was a bitter pill to swallow. No matter how many times he apologized or promised to change, his actions had already spoken louder than his words, and the trust he had broken with Rasheeda and their family could never be fully restored. Rasheeda, on the other hand, was moving on, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever, continuing to rise above the drama, leaving Kirk and his lies behind her. Rasheeda had learned a valuable lesson: never settle for less than what you deserve. And Kirk had learned that harsh actions speak louder than words, and that redemption isn't always possible. In the end, Kirk's violent outburst at Rasheeda was only one chapter in a much larger story of betrayal, public humiliation, and the demise of a once prominent reality show. The media buzz surrounding their failed marriage eventually subsided, replaced by new scandals and new faces in the reality TV industry. As the dust settled, it became evident that, although Kirk may have had his moment in the spotlight, Rasheeda had taken charge of her story, transformed her suffering into strength, and demonstrated to the world that she could thrive no matter what. It was an intense emotional roller coaster, and while Kirk Frost's shocking outburst and subsequent downfall left us all in shock, it's evident that Rasheeda emerged stronger than ever, demonstrating to us what true resilience looks like. Do you think Kirk will ever truly redeem himself, or has his past finally caught up with him? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you believe that Kirk's story is over, or do you think there is still hope for him to return? If not, please do so. For more, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. The most recent information from the reality world today, and as always, enable notifications. Watch for the next video where we go into further detail so you don't miss any stories that are upending the entertainment industry. As we dig deeper into the consequences of this incident and speculate about Kirk and Rasheeda's future, the drama is far from over. So pay attention.